Here's a little practice for the inner thigh muscles, the adductors. For this practice, we will need a block and access to a wall. If you don't have access to a wall, I'll show you a way around it, but it's kind of nice to have. So we actually start by bringing our butt up close to the wall, rolling onto our backs, and just taking our legs up the wall. And then from here, we're going to bend the knees, and we're going to bring the feet towards the butt. Now, if you don't have access to the wall, you can always just sit up as such with the feet together. But if you do have a wall, it's kind of nice to have. So we'll sit here. In this pose, you can bring the hands to the inner thighs or the inner knees. If you like, you can just press them out a little bit. Not hard, this shouldn't hurt. Let's take about 5 long, slow breaths here. If you want to press the knees a little bit more, get a little more into the inner thigh muscles. Abducting the hips. Take another round of breath, nice and easy. And out. Then take the hands away. And slide the legs back up the wall. Take a breath here. And then we'll just open the legs down the wall. Like we did in our Baddha Konasanas, to the Baddha Konasana, we can bring our hands to the inner thighs and just use a little bit of gravity down. Or you can set your dog on it to weigh you down. It's a nice, long, deep breath in and out. Maybe as we go, the heels go a little wider. Bring the hands to the inner thighs. If you want to give yourself a little bit of a stretch, you can do that. Now for this, if you don't have the wall, you can just sit here, a wide-legged forward fold. And we had our block handy, so if you wanted to make it a little more relaxed, you can just come down and just bring the forehead to your block. But if I have the wall, it's nice to have. Nice to use. This gets a little more to the hamstrings, where that might get a little more to the adductors, but flexibility is relative, so give it a shot both ways. Go take another round of breath. And then if your legs are up the wall, bring your feet back together. If you're sitting on the floor, legs go long, take a breath. And if you're on the wall, roll your legs to the side and press yourself up, and we'll come into a downward facing dog. Good, take a breath in here. Down. Take another inhale. On the exhale, step your left foot on the outside, even off your mat, or maybe hands length off the mat. And we're going to come up into this kneeling position with a wide stance. I'm going to bring my 2 hands to my thigh, and I'm just going to lean in towards that left heel. So we're going to start to feel this kind of on the inner thigh there. As much as you can, try not to lean forward. So if you want to press the hands away, stay nice and lifted. We really should get into those right inner thigh muscles. Good. Take another round or 2 with breath. Good, one more inhale. And then come back up. 2 hands to the mat, 2 feet to the mat, downward dog. Take an inhale. On the exhale, step your right foot on the outside of your right hand. Back knee comes down, and we're in this wide kneeling stance here. 2 hands come to the top of that right thigh. And we're just gonna lean kind of at that diagonal. Again, you might play around with it just depending on your own body, your own flexibility. Or start to feel that on that left inner thigh muscle. Dr. Magnus adductor brevis, adductor longis. Chest stays lifted to avoid rounding forward. Take a few more rounds of breath. Good. One more inhale. And then come back up. 2 hands to the mat. Downward dog. From here, rock forward towards a plank, but just bring the knees to the mat and come into all fours, a quadruped position. Now from here, what I'm doing, take your left leg and extend it all the way out. We should have that right hip stacked on that left hip, and then all we're going to do is we're going to sit back a little bit. See this from this way. I start here, take my left leg out, and I sink back. If we should have our block, we can always bring our forearms to the block. Good, a few rounds of breath. Again, you can kind of play around by leaning more forward, more back, just depending on individual hip mobility. Good, another breath in. And then come back up. Quadruped position, and then we take the right leg out. Chill at the toe pointing forward, slide that block back if we need it, and then start to sit back. Now if you don't feel like you're getting much, you can always either walk that opposite knee out a little bit further, or you can toe heel that foot out a little bit. We're just going to feel that right inner thigh muscle. And some folks, when they do this, they kind of like to make it a little more active, and that's fine. But we don't want to bounce into anything. With this nice, slow, controlled movement, we go to that point of resistance, and then we just back it off a little bit. Over time, the tissue just starts to creep a little bit, just giving us that range of motion. Good. Take another round of breath. And then hands back to our quadruped position. Now keep the block where it is. Now from here, go ahead and stand all the way up. Bring the feet about hip width and just take a brief ragdoll pose. Forward fold, you can bring the hands to the inside of the elbows. It's nice just to sway the hips a little side to side. Now bring those hands, thumbs to the hip creases. Press the hips back, chest forward as we come up. And then toe heel your feet out or walk them out, just beyond the shoulders. Bring our hands to the hips, take a breath in. And on an exhale, we start to lean forward. As we're coming forward, we can take the hands off the hips, bring them towards the floor. You can bring them towards a block, depending on whatever height you like. And we want to make this, you're going to get this in the hamstrings, but we want to try to get this a little bit more in the inner thighs. So when you're here, you can toe heel your feet out a little bit. Maybe you need the block to put your hands on. So we're almost kind of in this middle splits type position. Just like that last pose we did, but putting both legs together. Good. Maybe over time, I'm going to press them out a little bit more. Good. Take another round of breath here. And then start to toe heel back in. But keep them a little bit wider of the shoulders. And then just drop the hips into this squat pose. Now, if you can't quite get down, you have your block there. You have some other kind of prop. You can always sit it right here. Squeeze the knees together. Lift the chest. You can use the hands to kind of almost press the knees out a little bit more. Good, another round of breath here. And then hands down, stand up to a forward fold. And the last thing to do is come down to the knees again. A little thing called frog pose. So from here, I'm just going to take the legs wide. And we're just going to lean forward and just sit down to this wide-legged pose. And you can play around with how wide the legs go. Be mindful of the knees. No pain should be here. We should feel this just on the inner thigh muscles. If you're not feeling the inner thigh muscles and you feel a little bit more in the knee, you can bring the knees a little closer together. Good. Take a round up to your breath here. Good. One more inhale. And then start to squeeze the knees back together. Sit back on the heels, sit up. Take a breath here.